Hey, what is up, everyone? Today I'm going to talk about when all the economic numbers are a lie. What can we do? How can we position ourselves to remain resilient when everything we see around us doesn't seem to match the data that we're getting presented to us? So, as you guys are aware, the past several years, Americans have been getting gaslit on the true and underlying economic data. And, you don't have to look too far. You guys remember back in 2021, 2022? They stated that inflation was 4, 5, 6, up to 9%. And you go to the store and you see a hamburger and it used to be the dollar menu, right? And then you see it get changed to the value menu, and now that dollar burger is $3. Or that gas that you used to pay $2.50 for is now $4.50, $5. Or eggs. We see eggs. They go from $1.13, $1.20, $1.40, $50 here in Arizona. It went up to $9 for a carton. So everyone can see that the data wasn't true. And we still kind of just went along with it. We're just like, okay, yeah, inflation's up, but we didn't really know what the actual rate was. And I think the reason why is if the actual rate of inflation was told to us, I think we'd be rioting in the streets. It would be really bad because we're not seeing a proportional increase in our wages. So why are we getting inflated at 100, 200, 300% for the year? Or maybe, let's just say conservatively, I think we can all agree about 50% inflation happened. Okay, so we didn't see that increase in pay. So it would have caused a lot of social fabric and civil unrest if that were to have been brought true, but it wasn't. And, we see this oftentimes because we see certain parties or self-interested groups try to mask the data to serve a political purpose. So, for example, look at 2024, the re-election for Kamala and Biden. They puffed up the numbers to help the Democrats, right? They were talking about how the jobs they had all these downward adjustments, a few months later. It's one of those things where they want to say that the economy's great, but there's really something ugly happening underneath, and they can't just say it. The next thing is, back in 2022, they couldn't say inflation was really what it was at, because then they would have been on the hook, right? They would have been, you guys caused this big mess. What's funny now is their mistakes back then are starting to haunt them now, because they're in a period where if they cut rates, it will cause inflation to go up through the roof. But if they raise rates, the economy will completely break. So if you guys just saw it a few days ago, just recently, the job numbers came out. They just stated enormous, huge downward revisions in the labor numbers. So the downward revisions were 18,000 for the month of May and 14,000 for June, instead of the 140,000 stated or the 120,000 stated the month after. These are huge revisions of up more than 110, 120,000, right? That's huge. That's like a 90% miss. And they still went out with the report. So then you see the numbers for July come in and they're like, yeah, it was 100,000 new jobs or what have you. It's like, no, we already know that's probably between, 10,000 and 15,000. But they're not going to tell us that. It's like this big situation of gaslighting. So what do we do? What can we do as citizens and as people when all the data we're getting is just a complete lie? And in fact, all the data is such a lie, like the people that are releasing this data to us, they're the ones that are trying to mask it over. So it's like they're the ones that control the policy of the Fed and the Treasury. They're lying to us. What do? We can't do anything. We're just kind of boiling frogs in water. So they said inflation is coming back down to 2%. I just went to the grocery store today, and a lot of the things I bought, a 12-pack of soda was like $13. I remember that being just $5 or $6 a few years ago. Now it's $13 for a 12-pack of Coke. Coffee. Coffee used to be $9 for my big Folgers carton. Now, that same thing is about $15-16. So that's a 50% inflation rate, guys. That's big. So, what we're going to see is we're going to have to see things with our own eyes, honestly. If you go to the grocery store, save your receipts, and then look and see if they came out with an inflation number of 2% over the course of the past year, did that $100 item now cost $102, or did that $100 item cost you $140, right? And do that across the board. Do that across the board, and you will see, no, it is much higher than 2% inflation. That is complete BS. It's closer to 10, 20, 30% inflation, but the stated rate they're giving you, the stated rate is only 2.9%. So Trump just fired the head of the BLS, but I'm like, we need more of a sacrifice than that. Like, we need to upend all this. We need to get more transparency, because clearly the way that things are being done now is not good enough, and we are spiraling in a situation that is not beneficial for anyone. If all the decisions over the past couple of years were made off of this faulty data, then think about it. If all the decisions were made off the faulty data, then all the outcomes are going to be faulty. Bad data in, bad data out. So we almost need to undo. We almost need to like construct things from the ground up. It's like we've been working hard on making this car, and it literally won't pass one safety rating test because we were getting all these approvals on all these different car parts that never would have gotten approved if we got the actual data of what these parts were. And I just got to say, guys, everything you can see right now, when you go down and you see things, I don't think any of it's true. And what can we do about this? How can we fix this, right? If everything's a lie, what can we do? Well, I think there's some things we can do. And I think the lie, it's being fabricated, and they're continuing it to perpetuate this crumbling system. I think the majority of wealth in this country is between like the 70, 74, 78-year-old people, and they just want their yields. And I think they're kind of making the calls to Powell and calls to others, and I'm telling you, everything seems to be a lie, and I don't know if it's going to get better. But I do think there is change on the horizon, which is good. The system is literally crumbling from the inside out, and we're seeing it in slow motion. We're seeing a slow motion train crash right now. And, it's what's even sadder is, you can see the Fed, they're going forward with a $3.1 billion renovation on a building. Now the Fed, why do they need a $3.1 billion? It's almost like a mockery of the crumbling of our system, right? I mean, look at it. We're going to be in a future where we don't even need physical buildings as much for like work. And they're investing all this money. This building should be no more than 100 million, maybe 200 million tops, and they're spending more than 10 times that. And the biggest insult is given the current state of the economy. They're doing it in these conditions. And how are they paying for it? That's right. Inflation and with your dollars. So they're giving it to their buddies, and this is just further going to hurt the American people. It doesn't hurt right away. Remember, guys, the COVID stimulus in 2020. All those checks, they didn't hurt for the first year and a half. They started to hurt 2, 3, 4 years down the road. That one COVID check for, I don't know if it was $1,200 or something, I think it was $1,200. It's worth $22,000 in Bitcoin right now. Think about that for a second. You're going to be like, well, Paul, $22,000, that's just because Bitcoin. No, that's literally the monetary inflation we've seen over the past several years. You can't buy a burger anymore for less than $3. In fact, if you go to Five Guys, it's probably $35 for a burger. Go into a mid-pizza restaurant, 20, 25, $30 a pizza. So we're also seeing further insults by the White House building a several $100 million ballroom as people are starving. So you're seeing these elites kind of get together and exacerbate things by doing several billion-dollar projects on the Fed, big extensions on the White House for ballrooms for the bureaucrats. And people are starving, people are struggling to make ends meet, people are losing their jobs. And with all these numbers being fake, I don't even know if the 3.1 is real. I don't know if the hundreds of millions on the ballroom is real. That could be 4 or 5 billion for all I know, and that the ballroom could be over $1 billion. I don't know. But these numbers are fake. And the system is further falling into the darkness. So what can we do as people? I think it's about studying the time chain. We got to study the time chain. We got to understand that Bitcoin can be audited every 10 minutes. You can't audit the Federal Reserve ever. Maybe you can get those reports that they self-release on the federalreserve.org website, but those are coming from them. Can anyone independently audit the Fed? No. Can you independently audit Bitcoin? Yes. So that right there is why, what do? I go towards Bitcoin, because at least it's transparent, right? You'll never be able to audit the Federal Reserve, and you can always audit this. And don't trust, guys, in this environment. Don't trust, verify. Yes, we do. It would be nice to have rates drop, but will it actually help? It'll send asset prices going forward, but ask yourself, will it actually help everyone? Or will those living paycheck to paycheck struggle even worse? Will the middle class further fall down into the lower class, and will the rich move to the upper class? I don't know. All I'm saying is it's best to be in a position where you hold assets, because you never know what they're going to do. And they're going to try to devalue the dollar to pay down the debt, to further exacerbate the Ponzi scheme. And given that they're the asset holders, guess what? They hold all the assets, so they're going to get rich as inflation roars and as interest rates go down. Don't get gaslit by holding too many dollars at once. But also, don't trust anything that they say. Make sure to go look at the grocery store prices on your own. Save the receipts. Do your own inflation rate. Go look up the shadow stats. And at the end of the day, we need to position ourselves for truth. And how can we validate the truth? By just seeing things with our own two eyes. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. Always stack sats, and I'll see you guys in the next one.